Well, let's get started. This is the Move-Ups and Trade-Ups Sellers webinar, how to find homeowners looking to move up. So if you have joined us today, obviously you're a real estate agent, hopefully looking to help homeowners buy a new house, sell their existing house, buy a new house, rent their existing house, buy a new house, any combination thereof. So we're going to talk about a lot of those different combinations today. That's what we'll cover. Why do we do these webinars? Well, there's no pitch at the end. There's no soft sale at the end. It's really just trying to put out some good education and try to meet new people. And that's the primary goal of why we're doing this. So if you are worried about some type of hard sale at the end, well, worry no further. It's not coming. So a little house cleaning first, as they call it. Yes, this is recorded, so you don't need to take notes if you are unable to. I do encourage you to grab a pen and paper. The presentation will be available in PDF form, and yes, the links contained in will be sent out with the recording email as well. Welcome Karen on the line with us. Hi, Karen.
Hello there, and thank you very much for joining us.
She's going to help us moderate the questions and keep an eye on the chat box and interrupt me when I go too long. So thanks for joining me today, Karen. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So who am I? My name is Lauren Winsler. I'm the branch manager of Frost Mortgage in Santa Rosa, California. A little bit about my background. I got into the mortgage business in October of 2008 when the world seemed to be on fire as far as the housing market. And this type of transactions near and dear to my heart. I'll tell you a story later when we get further in. But some of the first and most constant and consistent transactions I've been involved with are move-up buyers. The very first transaction was a move-up type scenario right when I got into the business in October 2008. It's been a consistent, important area, and it's even more important now as the housing market's kind of turned around and started to heat up in the last 12 plus months. This recording being made in July of 2013, this webinar being made in July of 2013. I actually have a kind of a unique background. I come to the mortgage origination business not from a traditional sales background, but I was actually a computer software developer. So I spent 10 years working for software companies and working to to write software and do program management. During that time, it's going back 15 years now. We were very we worked a lot with conferencing software, and it's just amazing what we can do now with conferencing. So that's one of the reasons I loved doing webinars. Back then, you had a product called NetMeeting. You could get maybe 10 people online. Now I can get hundreds. So enough about that, though. Why do we care about move-up buyers? Why do we care about emphasizing trade-up buyers or trade-up sellers? Well, homeowners don't want to sell and become homeless. Now that might be an exaggeration, right? It's kind of, to say, now is a great time to sell to someone that owns their home is, a difficult statement if they really are wanting to know about, how they can purchase their new home. So a lot of real estate marketing that I observe focuses on the aspect of selling the house. It's a great time to sell. It's a seller's market. Well, that's great. However, most homeowners don't want to sell. There are the exceptions, and we'll cover those. But we're going to just break down all the different scenarios about how a homeowner can qualify to purchase a new home if they don't own that home outright and don't have the cash in the bank to do it all. So instead, as an agent, instead of looking for sellers, we want to be looking for move-up buyers, or what I call trade-up sellers. And this type of positioning and marketing allows you to be really laser targeted. It is more complicated, significantly more complicated than first-time buyers. I love first-time buyers because A, they may be doing multiple transactions with you over the life of their home ownership, if you will, whether you're on the mortgage side or whether you're on the real estate side. I love first-time buyers. They listen to you. They do what you ask them to do. You're just taking them from a rental situation to typically into a home ownership situation. When someone already owns a home, it's a bit more complicated, and they may think that they can't do it, and that's where you come in with the information we're going to cover. It's different than second homes. If somebody is a high-income earner and they're saying, I want to buy a second home, of course, we're in Northern California. People might say, I want to buy a second home in wine country. I want to buy a second home in Tahoe. If you're in Southern California, you might be looking at any of the, Palm Springs, for instance, and whatnot. So it's different than that. There are the exceptions as far as, sellers just outright needing to sell, and those are typically revolving around relocation and retirement. We're talking today about moving up. In other words, taking somebody out of a smaller house into a larger house, which is what people typically want. In retirement, you could be looking at downsizing someone's house. So there's 5 basic profiles, and I'm going to just list them off here, and there's a 6th one that we're going to try to avoid. It has a different name, and but we'll run through these real quick and then dive deep on each one. And if you have a question, chime in to the Q&A or the chat box, and Karen will highlight the question, make sure that we cover it in due course. Equity sellers or trade-ups. You got equity move-up buyers, okay, where they're going to keep their existing home. You got break-even trade-up sellers, which is what I call it when someone barely is able to sell the house. In other words, they've become, they've gone from being upside down to not upside down. You've got buyers that have purchased or purchased in the last 7 years or so, might be upside down, but have high income. Okay, is another scenario. You've got equity move-up buyers with high income as well. These two, if you can see my mouse moving here, these two are very similar but different. And then you have the category that we're going to learn to try to avoid, which is the buy and bail category, and we'll dive into that later. So an equity seller is a client that wants to sell and move. This is what most real estate agents dream of, right? Somebody that says, I need to sell my home, right? Of course, they may be looking to purchase a home on the flip side of that, but they may need to sell it for whatever reason. So in this market, equity seller that is moving to a new home or is buying a new home could get away with a contingent listing. In other words, they will not close until they are in contract and do a concurrent close on their new purchase. And that can work in this market. It's a little tougher on the buy side, but it could certainly work. It depends on the scenarios as they're moving up. The bigger house has fewer interested offers and so forth. Their smaller house might have a lot of people willing to wait on them. Of course, there's the ability to do rent backs too, let the transaction close, let your client still live there, the new person rents it back to them, and so forth. So this is the typical kind of category or scenario that we see focused on. Equity move-up buyers, and I put medium income, and the reason I do that is I'm going to break down a couple different categories, but this is someone that is wanting to keep their existing home. So we don't call them a move-up seller or trade-up seller. We call them a move-up buyer because they're literally taking home A that they've lived in for some number of years, and they're going to rent that in what we call a departing residence type scenario, or convert it to a rental property. And this is pretty common. You've probably done this and you've probably seen this. The qualifying on this has gotten significantly more difficult in recent years. It requires 70 to 75. Let me make a typo there. That should say 75. Loan to value. In other words, they need to have 30 or 25% equity to purchase again with a FHA or conventional loan and use future rental income. So I say medium income because this is the type of buyer that might not be able to qualify for both mortgage payments. And they consequently look at it and say, well, I'm stuck. I can't buy a new house because I can't qualify for that new house. And the house I'm living in is not rented, right? I get people all the time asking me, well, should I move out, rent it, declare it on my taxes, and come back and buy another house a year from now? And I go, well, you could do that, but that's significantly more risky. People don't want to be run the risk of getting locked out of the market and not finding the home they want to purchase. So this is probably one of the more complicated loan guidelines in the market today, and it started in 2008. It requires us to have a lease in place for security deposit, evidencing the deposit in the client's bank account, first month's rent, and it can't be a relative, obviously, signing the lease. And these guidelines were put in place back in 2008 to prevent buy and bail, where people bought a house and then stopped paying the mortgage on the other payment. It used to be relatively straightforward to go and say, I'm going to buy a new house and rent my other house, and we would use future rental income, maybe using a rent survey of what the house would rent for according to an appraiser, and then use that income to qualify. Well, that's just not possible in the current mortgage environment. We could also, with this type of scenario, refinance someone that has equity in their home, refinance the existing residence as a rental and cash out for the down payment, or just refinance it to lower the mortgage payments, or switch it in from a 15-year to a 30-year and allow them to qualify. So equity move-up buyers. A little bit of notes here. You know, people always get confused about this. So since we've got the visuals here, I decided to pull up the 1,300-page Fannie Mae seller guide and point to it. You know, for one unit property, to convert it to from a primary to an investment property, we need that fully executed lease agreement, security deposit, bank statement showing deposit, and we can basically count 75% of the gross rental income towards their income and allow them to qualify for 2 mortgage payments. But we need 30% equity or 70% loan to value for conventional. And it's different for FHA. You can't use it unless certain conditions exist. And it's a little more relaxed, but you need 75%. There's asset requirements as well. We're not going to get into this, but most people look at this type of situation and they just assume they can't buy another house because they can't afford both payments. So if you've got someone with good income, good credit, the combination of down payment or equity, it's possible. We've done this with high balance jumbo loans in San Francisco, you know, taking a 2-unit primary occupancy, you know, with a $4,500 rent payment coming in, and use that $4,500 to help qualify. We've used it in you know, other situations where it works. So it works well. It's just significantly more complicated to pre-approve a buyer based on kind of a moving number. So what number do they use for the appraised value, you're probably asking right now, or do they use to calculate this? It is an appraisal, right? So it becomes very important to understand what their existing house is worth. Oops. Got one of the things I'm going to mention here, right, and we're jumping out of the profile, but we want to learn the rental market in your area. If you're accustomed to telling your clients about the comparable sales, if you've got move-up buyers that are going to convert their home into a rental property, you need to start telling them that rents are going up, right? Hey, it's a great time to sell. That's true. It is a seller's market. But it's a great time to be a landlord as well, and that's the thing that's maybe not getting out there in the messaging. So a great way to collect rental data, if you've never done it, is go to Craigslist, and you can go into the let me zoom in here a little bit. Can you see that, Karen? You must be on mute. If you zoom in to the...
Yes, I was.
Okay, okay, terrific. I want to make sure someone's still out there. So you zoom into the rental and you can pick your category. So let's say you're in the North Bay, or if you're in the East Bay, you could say I want rents in Emeryville, just across the bridge, and pull that out. There's 88 postings. Well, I've done this before, where we just copy and paste all of this into Excel. So you could say I want only 2 or 3 bedrooms or something like that, and basically copy and paste it. So obviously there's not a lot of big houses in Emeryville. So 2-bedroom, a lot of condos and so forth. So you can get an average rent number basically. So I encourage you to take a look at that. I mean, just literally copy pasting this into Excel and then separating the columns by the dash, and you can get average rent numbers for different size apartments and so forth. And in California, there's a lot of data on Craigslist for rentals and offerings for rentals and so forth. So let's switch back to our presentation. So learn to use the rental market. Learn to get some data there. There's a category I like to call the break-even trade-up seller, and we've had a few of these where the home sells for little or $0 in proceeds after transaction costs. So someone sells the house. Let's say they got a house worth $250,000 and it sells for $250,000, and they owe $236, $240, maybe even closer to $250. A lot of agents attack it and say, well, if I can, help you with the purchase. On the other side, if the house doesn't sell for enough to cover the mortgage and so forth, to avoid it becoming a short sale, there's all sorts of negotiation that occurs there. When we do these, we underwrite it as a pending sale if it's contingent, and we look at, well, how can they buy again using a low down payment type approach, using FHA or conventional with PMI, private mortgage insurance. You got what I call the upside down high income move-up buyer, right? This is someone that can qualify outright for the new home. So they owe more than their home is worth, okay, but their income and their credit and their down payment is such that they can buy again and not worry about the rental component. They may decide to rent the house. I would assume they decide to rent the house. But if they make enough to qualify for both mortgage payments, they don't need to worry about that until later. So this is the ideal scenario for us because it doesn't require so many moving parts. But as an agent, when you're looking at this, we got to be careful about people that are in that kind of buy and bail type scenario where they really do need rental income to qualify. Engaging in trying to get them pre-approved or pursuing a listing and so forth when they don't really want to sell unless they can purchase again. They don't want to not be a homeowner, do a short sale outright and rent. But maybe they don't have the income to qualify for both payments. So upside down high income. Our next category is the equity move up high income. And this is the same. This is the somebody that has equity, has a high income, but it's not selling the house. So we have this this category of equity trade up. This is the opposite of that. In other words, somebody is not going to sell their house. They are going to just buy it and move up to a new one. So they can qualify outright, and they have equity in the home, so they could use it as a collateral, a cash out for down payment. So the buy and bail category, this is I've got the photo of the folks walking out of one house and moving into another. They tightened the guidelines significantly in middle of 2008 in response to observing that people were taking advantage of this loophole. So someone that's upside down on the payment, essentially moving across the street, down the road, across town, they may or may not be in trouble with the mortgage payment, but let's say they're trying to qualify to buy again, but they don't intend to retain the other house because it's so upside down. Sometimes they can you know, be hard to spot. I mentioned the first transaction that I did in the mortgage business about 5 years ago, before I had my own branch, was a divorce situation. It was a rental, 2 houses, buying a third. The one of the spouses' houses was significantly upside down in the Northeast Bay, Hercules, Brentwood area, I believe, and they basically were able to qualify to purchase the new house as per the marital settlement agreement and so forth. 6 months later, I talked to them, and that house that they were renting, that the other spouse had moved out of, was in foreclosure. So, and I still see this all the time where agents will talk to me, and you know, they're trying to sell the house to a tenant or sell it to a relative or something like that. You've just got to avoid these type of scenarios like the plague. It's challenging. You know, you can ask a handful of questions to try to sniff out what's really going on. A lot of agents know what's going on, right? But they still work on it. Why? You might say, why would somebody work on something where there's a good chance the loan is not going to be approved? Because the underwriters are not stupid. They know how to detect when someone is looking to do this now. And it's because they just got nothing better to work on, I think, even though they're you know, they know what's going on. But I would always find out if they're current on their payment. Obviously, if somebody is upside down and not current on their payment, you should be thinking short sale is maybe a great way to help them in their financial situation. And you know, since November last year, we've got no FICO short sales. Where if you've got no doc short sales, right? If your FICO is below 620 and we're 90 days late or more, the short sale is nearly automatically going to be approved. So, in any case, number 2, applied for any type of modification. So a lot of times people, even though they're current on their payment, they'll go and try to apply for modification because they're so upside down and they're upset about it. So that's a good red flag for someone that maybe can't qualify on the flip side. They certainly can qualify and can afford their existing house, and were denied for that modification. And then 3, test their attitude towards their house. You know, do they like their house? Do they want to keep it? Or test their attitude towards government housing programs, and you'll find a lot of indicating things there. So let's talk about these kind of the 6 profiles and reviews. And if there's any questions, pop in the chat box. We'll jump back to them, and we're going to delve a little bit more. But we got the equity sellers, which are the typical dream scenario for an agent. I need to sell my house and then buy another one. I've got plenty of equity. I can qualify. I want to sell it and buy, so I've got a double transaction, right? Equity move-up buyers, where I'm going to convert my existing house to a rental property. We've got the break-even trade-up sellers, where I'm going to sell the house, but the amount of proceeds I get from the sale is going to be pretty dicey as far as completing that purchase. The break-even trade-up seller, that person you know, might be moving up per se, or might be moving to a different area or whatnot. There's a lot of different combinations, you know, because in that category, one thing you might be thinking, well, how if somebody barely, you know, they sell their house and they barely break even, how are they going to move up? How are they going to afford a higher end house? Well, they may have more down payment to provide. They may be adding borrowers or applicants to their loan application. You know, so you might have somebody that's gotten married since they bought a house, but they're selling a house, and then the new couple's buying a bigger house. So there's a lot of different scenarios that can fall into that category. You got upside down, high income. You got equity, move up, high income, and then our last bucket that we were talking about, the buy and bail category, which we want to try to avoid spending time on. So your map image goes here. What is that, Karen? Apparently my image did not paste when I thought it
It
did.
didn't like it. Maybe
So we're going to inline.
We'll
We'll edit this out. This is practice, right? Anyone watching right now. So one thing that we get asked about a little bit too is, what about just second homes, right? What qualifies as a second home? So someone can buy what's commonly called a second home. A second home is something the IRS allows you to declare the certain amount of the interest and so forth. On Schedule A, you're allowed to have a primary occupancy and a second home. Second home is not allowed to have rental income. So, this type of buyer is typically high income, but the property must qualify as a second home. So if I'm in California, it's got to be towards the ocean. It's got to be towards wine country. It's got to be at least a certain number of miles away. It's got to be in a vacation type area, so buying, and the underwriters will look at it and say, does this make sense as a second home, right? Sometimes you could buy a condominium as a second home. People often want to do that and then, rent it or something like that, and I just caution against that. But if the condo is in a vacation area, it could very well qualify as a second home. So a lot of times people say, well, why can't I buy it as a second home? It's 20 minutes away, right? It just doesn't work. They make us plot it out on a map and so forth. And this is a unique kind of bonus category that if you've got a client that has a house they've owned for a long time, and let's say they haven't had the money to fix it, okay? We like to call this deferred maintenance, right? We put off the maintenance to fix the house. I've done a few of those on my house for lack of time as well. So, but this person might be break even, they might be slightly upside down. Well, one of the things that you can advise them on is how to fix the house. They may just decide to live there, right, after fixing the house. More likely they're interested in selling it because they'd like to move, but the house is probably undervalued because of its condition. So they could apply for and borrow money over and above the current value of the property using the FHA renovation loan or the 203K. This program, which is rarely mentioned and leveraged as a refinance, would allow someone to fix the home and then go and remarket the property after all the repairs are fixed. So you've obviously probably heard of this in the last 4 or 5 years. It's become a popular loan. It's unpopular with some people, popular with others. It's a great tool, though, to allow someone to refinance, borrow additional money when they could even be upside down subsequently. In other words, you could have, say, a $250,000 house, and you could borrow $31,000 or more, almost $35,000 over and above that, and end up with a house worth $325,000 or something like that. The amount that the improvements can add to the value, well, you're an agent, what the curb appeal and all the other things, the renovation. So it doesn't have to be structural significant issues like fixing roofs and siding and all that. It can be, not just the pest work. It can be cosmetic upgrades too. So you can put a new kitchen in it, new bathrooms and so forth, and really make a house look good and then sell it. So there is a program. I think I mentioned this in one of the emails that went out about the webinar. There is a program that allows you to permits a purchase with little or no down payment even if they already own. It's one that's sponsored by a group in Sacramento called the National Home Buyers Fund, or the CHF Platinum Grant. So it's one of these neat programs that we get to participate in where it works with government loan programs. The person that buys using this grant program does not have to be a first-time home buyer, and they can own other real estate. The only requirement is that the home they're purchasing be their primary occupancy. So they have to be living in the property. So the only downside is that there is income limits, but the income limits are quite substantial. In our county, for instance, it's 90 some thousand, almost 95,000. In Marin, it's 100 and some thousand. So you've got very generous income limits. So the reason I mentioned the income limits can be a challenge is if they have to qualify using this program, it's got to fit into one of those buckets where they've got enough income to qualify, or the departing residence, or a lot of times if someone can qualify for 2 mortgage payments, they might be over the income limit, is what I'm trying to get at. So there's certain categories where this will work, and the unique thing about the grant program is if someone has, especially like the break-even type buyer, has little or no money to put down, or in this market they need closing costs, the grant will give them a 3% grant of the the loan amount. So if they did an FHA loan against a $300,000 purchase, they might be having a a $10,500 down payment, which would be 3.5%. Well, we take that loan amount and we'll get them 3% as a grant that can be applied towards the closing costs or towards the down payment. So a unique program that I think people don't realize that can be leveraged in move-up type situations. It's not solely restricted to first-time home buyer situations. So always ask your client if they're a veteran. We're always saying, when people come to us and say, they own a house, right? Find out if they're a veteran. Find out, and then we'll find out if their existing mortgage is a VA mortgage. Now, a veteran can only have one VA loan at a time, but a lot of veterans in the old days, right? In the old days, I mean the last 10 years or so, did not use their VA eligibility when they purchased or refinance, so their existing mortgage might not be a VA mortgage. So VA mortgages require 0 down payment, and there are some looser guidelines to help veterans with respect to purchasing. So I know a lot of servicemen and so forth that use the VA program and so forth. Every time they're transferred from one base to another and so forth, they buy another house, and when they move, they rent it, right? So they're wise to the knowledge of knowing that they can only have one VA loan, so they're commonly trying to reset that eligibility. I talked to one fellow client at one point. His model was he was an officer, so his model was always to rent those homes to servicemen downstream of his officer rank, and I guess that's one way to guarantee that the rent is always paid on time. But a lot of people in the military are able to build up a real estate portfolio as a result of the loan programs. Well, a lot of people don't realize the VA program opens up some other possibilities. So you might be thinking, well, I'm in kind of the outlying areas of my suburban area. I know about USDA. I know about the 100% financing that the USDA provides. What does USDA give us here in the move-up scenario? Well, USDA is going to require that they sell the home. You cannot be owning other real estate, basically, right? In other words, if you own other real estate in your name, you're not going to qualify for USDA. So you got to sell the house. Can be done as a relocation or pending sale. Does not require them to be first-time buyers. First-time buyers are classically someone that has no mortgage interest on their tax returns for the prior 3 years, so they haven't owned a home for 3 years. USDA does not require that, but it doesn't allow them to have other real estate concurrently. So if you get one thing out of this webinar today, understand that the move-up equation for many of those profiles is very payment-driven. In other words, what I'm paying today versus what I would be paying with the new mortgage, but also having rent, or what I'm paying for the new mortgage but having sold the other property, what is that payment going to do to my monthly budget? And because there's so many moving parts, that's why it gets a little bit complicated. And as a trusted advisor, you can take some of the mystery out of these moving parts. And a lot of mortgage calculators don't even take into account the move-up type equation, because some of the some of the math here is pretty complicated, especially if you try to estimate taxes. And it's very difficult to determine the tax benefit of someone moving out of their existing home, putting that putting that mortgage interest and other expenses on Schedule E, putting rent on Schedule E, and so forth. So there are a lot of advantages of owning rental real estate. I don't want to get into that angle, if you will, too deep right now. But even converting, selling someone's existing residence and paying off that mortgage and buying a new house, obtaining a new mortgage, there can be tax changes or benefits. One of the mortgage calculators I always like to point out is this one on Intelligent. I've got this up here. But so one of the more sophisticated mortgage calculators that I use with clients, and of course you can copy this link and I'll send it out later, but it gives you mortgage calculators, a lot of refinance, payoff or keep. What if I put an extra payment to my loan every year and so forth? What if I prepay it? Purchase calculator, but it's kind of complicated. Even the purchase calculator doesn't allow very easily to calculate what the before and after would be. We have to use a if we use this middle tab here, this middle button rather, and say it's a purchase and input a lot of information, then we go in the back end and add some more fields, we can determine what the tax benefits would be or what the payment benefits would be. So if you understand one thing about it, it's payment driven, right? It's always payment driven. So one of the things I promised is talking a little bit about, well, how can you use this information and how can I maybe change my positioning and try to find some move up or trade up type people. Well, if you do any direct mail marketing, look in your area and say, are there starter home neighborhoods? Are there homes where intermixed between the 4-bedroom houses, there's 2- and 3-bedroom houses, right? Where I live, for instance, about half and half are 3-bedroom houses versus 4-bedroom, 2-story, right? So a lot of times people buy a house with the intention of, moving to a bigger house as time goes by. You've got to be somewhat targeted in this analysis. I think a great category is the 3-in-1, 3-bedroom, 1-bath. Look at square footage. If someone's in a 1,200 to 1,400 square foot, 3-bedroom house, getting them a 2,200 square foot 4-bedroom house is going to seem like a substantial move up. So, be mindful of equal housing, as I mentioned this, but I've observed that a lot of the move-up home buyers are, certain age, sub 50, we're looking at kind of a generational shift and so forth. So, we're looking at people that have equity. They may be purchased in kind of 1990, 91 time frame through 2002. If they purchased in 2004, 2005, unless they've not done another mortgage and rapidly paid it off, they might not have equity, but that may not matter. So learn to use title data to identify move-ups, and this is where you can be laser targeted, hunting down people with this value proposition and sending them letters or postcards that say, now is a great time to buy a bigger house, right? Instead of saying, hey, we just sold another house, now is a great time to sell. Well, that's great, I want to buy, right? I mean, it just misses the mark. And people are doing the math in their head saying, well, I wonder if I could sell and move, or do I need to sell and move? So instead of sending 2,000 postcards to an entire geo-targeted area, you can pull very specific data based on someone's purchase date, when they last did a loan. Learning to read loan to value off of title data can be very good. And what I would encourage you to do, and we can have a subsequent webinar if there's good feedback on this, is how to what I call self-serve title data, right? Whenever I listen to real estate training programs, I always hear the person say, well, talk to your title rep about getting some data, get a farm, have them pull a farm for you or whatever. And the title rep is just trying to burn out whatever data that, the more you understand your neighborhoods, your cities, your zip codes and so forth, literally down to the property and parcels and so forth, the more that's going to serve you. And one of the tools that I've had a lot of success for, and I'm not promoting them in any way per se, is Agent Pro 24/7, which is, I think, affiliated with Fidelity. I'm not sure specifically, but it's a program that I think the account was $70 or $90 a month, where you literally can log in and every month pull 2,000 records included, and pull additional farms and so forth, and you can be very specific in your searches, looking at all this loan data and so forth. So this is something we could do as a future webinar. I don't want to get into it right now because people's eyes will glaze over if they're not prepared for it. So there's other kind of low-cost would say, well, I don't have money to do direct mail. Direct mail is expensive. I don't have $500 to blow on something, and I've been told that you got to do it 10 times before people remember your name, and that may be true. 10 times might be an exaggeration, maybe 3 or 4. But in any case, direct mail is a low-cost method, but it's also a very expensive method. What can I do besides just running around to coffee shops trying to bump into people saying, hey, you want to move up? You want to trade up? Obviously, you can take some of this information to some of your close referral sources and past clients and friends and so forth, and see if there's a deal in there. But a great way to market move up, trade ups, is to put together a kit or an offer, right? Say, I've got a move up kit. I'm going to help you trade up to a new house. And your value proposition is leading with trading up and moving up, as opposed to, hey, it's a great time to sell, and here are the comparable sales in your neighborhood, and do you want me to put a sign in your yard? So what might a move-up kit entail? One, a worksheet on the home they want to buy, right? Why do I put that first? Well, the focus has got to be on what they're trying to obtain, their goal, right? Again, their goal is not to sell their house and become homeless, right? Their goal is to buy another house. If you get that, it's going to be a miracle for you. Number 2 is a basic financial worksheet. I'm not asking real estate agents to become loan officers. I'm not asking for agents to become financial planners or tax advisors in any way, but taking some time to say, here's a do-it-yourself worksheet that's very payment-driven. Here's your current payment. Here's your budget. Here's what the rents in your area would be. Here's what the cash out might be, and so forth. So number 3, we know how to do the comparable market analysis and comparable values. That's easy. 4 would be rental data. This is the other category of data for a move-up type scenario where they want to retain the house. And then number 5, which I'll send out with the replay, and there'll be a link below this recording with this YouTube video that was mentioned in the email and page regarding this webinar. And the video explanation would be, taking it beyond just written explanation. Some people can read something and go, they get it. Other people need it in different forms, different modalities. Some people need to, hear somebody's voice, watch on a webinar, for instance. But what the video, and I'll jump forward and jump back, what I've done is said, well, hey, TurboTax is kind of a unique way to estimate the tax benefit, right? And I did a screenshot here for the webinar and blotted out the numbers it was showing here for the scenario. But what I've been able to do, obviously I'm not a tax advisor, consult tax advisors for tax advice. But with TurboTax, and a good proportion of your clients already use this tool, right? You can go in there and say, I have bought another house, estimate the interest and property taxes for the first full year of owning that house, or even a partial year. I would encourage just zoom forward past the first partial year and go straight to the first full year of home ownership. This is your tax benefit. In other words, we're going to take the interest that you're paying right now, or if you refinance, cash out, or refinance to make the cash flow better on your departing residence, let's put that on our Schedule E, and then put our estimated rent, as well as putting our estimated expenses on there, and that you may not be able to write off at this time, and then put the new purchases, a purchase on Schedule A, and recalculate the tax owed historically. In other words, it's not going to be good for 2013 if we use 2012 and so forth, but it gives us a guide, and it's better than most mortgage calculators that assume that everybody pays 25% tax, which we all know is not true. So I love this approach, and that's what this video does, is I do a non-branded explanation of using TurboTax to explain the tax benefit of buying up. It can be used to demonstrate the tax impact for someone that sells as well. So someone that owns a house that they've owned for a long time, let's say they've got a very seasoned mortgage. That's a fancy way of saying they've had that mortgage for a while. Well, if they've had a mortgage, a 30-year mortgage for 15 years, or let's say I'm working on one right now where we've got a 15-year mortgage and they've got 8 years left. Well, not much of the monthly payment is interest, so he's not getting much tax benefit. Do you think when they buy that new, bigger house with the 30-year loan, there's going to be a tax impact initially and a tax benefit? Absolutely, and that's something that we can estimate even if they were to sell the other property and not move it to Schedule E. So a great low-cost way of doing this is take this to your CPAs, your tax preparers, your insurance people, and saying, I've got this kit, right? It's very very simple, and they may look at it and say, this is great. You know, I've been looking for some time. You know, I've got tons of people. You may get referrals straight away from tax preparers and CPAs that say, I've got people that need to buy. You know, we just finished their taxes 3 months ago, and they need a tax deduction. And you know, let me take this little kit to them and see if it resonates. So, offer it online, offer it to your past clients, offer it to your referral sources, mention it in your direct mail. I encourage you to put that together, and if you need help with that, please contact me. I can provide not just the video portion, number 5. So a little bit about us, and any questions popping in there, Karen, before I move on?
Not so far actually, but
okay.
I will double check. Okay.
If any, I appreciate that. Thanks. So if any question, maybe I covered it so thoroughly, people are either eyes are glazed over, or they're furiously taking notes, or I put them to sleep. So I didn't open with this because really, who cares? But I'll mention it now. Who is Frost? You know, I talked a little bit about myself. Frost is a division of Primary Residential Mortgage. Here's the soft sale, by the way. We're the 15th largest mortgage-specific lender in the U.S., and we're the 8th largest FHA lender by unit volume. The guy with the gray hair in the middle is Greg Frost. If you're in the mortgage business, you would recognize him as being the Roger Bannister of the mortgage business. He's the first billion-dollar loan originator. So he's our division president, and we were happy to have him stop by last year during that visit. So that's a little bit about us. In the promotion of this webinar, as part of our series, I mentioned that this has the potential to put an extra closing in your pocket every quarter. And you say, well, how is that? And it's just changing positioning. In other words, what you go out and ask for and what you look for is what you're going to find. If you're looking for short sales, look for people that are behind on their payment and upside down, and you'll find people that are behind on their payment and upside down. If you're looking for cash buyers to do investment property purchases, look for cash buyers and investment property purchases, and you will find those. Real estate, what I love about real estate is there's no zero-sum game. There's no rule that says these are the number of transactions that will occur in my city, my county, my state, and I can only get what I can get out of that zero-sum. You know, if I take a transaction and create a transaction, I take it away from another agent. Well, you and I know that that's just not true. As a real estate agent, you can go out and create transactions, create deals. You know, you're in a market where the inventory that you sell, you don't have to purchase. You don't have to buy the house and then resell it. You know, it's not like working in a shoe store where the only shoes you can sell are the ones on the sales floor, right? You can literally create transactions if you can understand some of these complicated positioning and complicated profiles. So change the positioning. These are my takeaways. Change your positioning a little bit. Include the move-up component and see if that doesn't resonate. Identify these profiles and develop a move-up buyer kit, trade-up seller kit. And that's all I've got. Any questions that have popped in there?
I don't see any, but please, if you do have any questions, now is the time to post. Thank you so much.
So we'll be sending out a blast for the next session, next webinar, and I'd love to hear some feedback on how this went for you. And if you have any questions, my contact information, how to reach me, my direct dial number is 707-331-1414, and of course I'm Lauren at Frost North Bay. So thanks to everybody for joining us, and if you're watching this on recording, thanks. Please leave a comment, share it, and tell your friends and enemies about our webinars, and get on the list for the next one. So thanks everybody. Thanks Karen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.